Hi, it's Richard and Craig with our week 4 feedback video. Final week of the course, actually, Craig.
It's amazing how quickly 4 weeks just flies by, and we've just really enjoyed so much just reading the learners' insights and experiences and so on, and also when we get to this stage of the course, just really appreciating the feedback, not only for what's been provided by ourselves and Jen and Sherelle and so on, but just really the appreciation of fellow learners and the support that each give the others.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah.
A lot of our learners talking about now taking their mindfulness off the cushion, so to speak, out of the chair into day-to-day life, which is great. I think it's a really good thing to reflect on at this point in a 4-week course. I might want to just take this opportunity to plug our part 2, Maintaining a Mindful Life. So for anybody wondering how do we maintain this in an ongoing way, then that course starts on August 24, so that'll be a good way to do it. Yeah.
Some of the learners have been noticing that the mind's rebelling, like the Empire Strikes Back. Maybe this could be the first of many movie references throughout this feedback video. But it's not surprising. The mind it's a creature of habit, and mindfulness is not about habit. So we shouldn't be surprised that the mind rebels. It works against it. And but one of the things that's not so helpful, I've found in my experience, is criticising what's being noticed. Even when the mind's sort of rebelling, is to not even criticise that, but to get interested, to sort of just be interested to notice it, that sort of non-judgmental attitude. Yeah. But to be curious, to notice when we try too hard to get it right and how we make it even more complex and difficult rather than just easing off a bit. Just noticing that sort of the gentle touch, as it were. Yeah.
And it's a sign of progress too. They talk about the monkey mind. You know, this mind's jumping around all over the place, that default mode. It's like a little monkey on a long chain. The monkey's jumping from tree to tree, doesn't even know it's on a chain. Mindfulness meditation starts to rein it in a little bit. And after a while, the monkey sort of thinks, well, hang on a sec, I was enjoying jumping around. And so that's often a sign of progress. You know, even just to notice that, I think, is a very good thing. So it's a good thing to notice.
Can I use another metaphor?
Sure.
You want another metaphor?
Go for it. Let's mix it up.
Yeah, we won't mix our metaphors too much, but it's a little bit like, too, when you go to a market, and if you're quite clear you're just walking through the market, you're not interested in what's for sale, then you kind of, you know, there's noise and there's stuff going on, things are being offered for your attention, but it doesn't sort of get you in. But you know, when we're sort of going through a market and then you show a little bit of interest in something, next thing you're kind of set upon. And it's really hard to extract ourselves. And it's a little bit like that with the mind. The mind sort of, hey, and it just is introducing things for our awareness. And as soon as we kind of start to get drawn into it, we notice there's a sort of, it's hard to get away. Whereas it's not a problem. The stillness is not so much in trying to stop the noise of the market and so on, but in being less and less moved by it. Less and less drawn into it. And so, and many people, I think, find it hard because we think we've got to stop the din of the market, stop the thoughts and everything else, rather than learning to be less moved by it. So there's a sort of a stillness in the non-attachment, not being moved by the stuff that's going on in our own minds.
It's a good way to put it. Speaking of markets, a lot of discussion this week about mindful eating. Great, very popular topic.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And really enjoying eating with more awareness, but more in touch with the body and its cues and so on, because we can get very out of touch with that. And just another word too, eating disorders, you know, are sort of relatively common, in fact getting more common these days, which is a concern. And obviously if there are significant issues around eating or anorexia, for example, you know, making sure that mindfulness may be very helpful, but making sure getting support of a trained, you know, health professional to support that rather than just relying on this course alone.
Definitely, good idea. Yeah. Emotions as well. That's something that's pretty common.
Yes.
Learners noticing that they're more able to be with their emotions. So there's a fuller range of emotions. There's a lot of intensity, but without necessarily getting lost in them, which I think is a really good sign. Yeah, being less reactive to COVID-19, you know.
Yeah, I think too, there's a kind of misunderstanding sometimes, thinking, oh, well, that sort of equanimity and so on that comes with mindfulness means that life becomes a very dull and unemotional place. It's like, yes, I'm feeling a lot calmer since I've learned mindfulness, but life's a lot less colourful. And I don't think it's like that at all. There are emotions, but that sense of not being drawn into emotions, I mean, we don't get on that emotional roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
Or sometimes when there's a little bit of anger, getting so drawn into it that we escalate it way beyond what's healthy or appropriate. And I think mindfulness can help in that way.
It's definitely true, right? In the beginning, perhaps we do step back from emotions and sort of observe them as events taking place in the body. But ultimately, with mindfulness, we can be in the full flow of our emotions and of life and really present and allowing everything to move through us, but without losing ourselves in that. And that's really, I think, a good direction to head in.
Yeah, and I think in the heat of the moment too, you know, like anger or something else, or people could be working in professional life and stepping into some pretty complex situations. And just because we're mindful doesn't mean that there isn't a heat of the moment.
No.
But if there's a little shaft of awareness coming into that heat of the moment, it can be a game changer in terms of giving us the opportunity to realise we actually have a choice. Mm-hmm. If we're so much caught up that we totally lose ourselves, no awareness, then, you know, it's just the reactions that we're habituated to, sort of stimulated to by the external environment without much choice.
Yeah, and along those lines, actually, there was an interesting question about, you know, if I don't react in the moment, but later on I'm still thinking about it, stewing on it, you know, have I just maybe internalised what happened? I think that's actually a very, very interesting question.
Yeah, because that sort of not reacting, it might be the wiser thing in the moment to not react in a certain situation, but it's not the end of the story, because that internalising and going over it, reliving it, projecting into the next time, that comes at a cost as well. So it's not an easy thing. That sort of real non-attachment, the real acceptance where keeping our peace is not just an external thing, but actually a sense of peace on the inside. Yeah,
and sometimes it is just about letting go over and over and over again of the resentful story or whatever's sort of gone with you afterwards. It's about putting that down and letting it go. But at the same time, sometimes I think we do need to respond. You know, if we differentiate reacting habitually to responding, sometimes a response does mean stating boundaries, expressing needs, speaking our truth, right? It's not about just, and again, mindfulness isn't just about kind of allowing everything just to happen. And, you know, I mean, sometimes if someone crosses a line, it might be really appropriate to say, no, that's not okay with me. And you can do that in a very mindful way without a whole lot of story about it. And it's a response to the situation. And when we express those primary emotions like that and the underlying needs, we tend not to be sort of carrying them later on.
That's
so
right.
So again, you know, there are different ways of working with it, but I think it's a great question to bring up.
Yes, that's right. And sometimes with something like grief, there are quite complex and very deep emotions, and it's not like the principles of mindfulness won't work there. They're the same principles, but the challenge is much greater. But it really does help if we bring mindfulness into the smaller things, and the smaller things we may find when, you know, significant things happen in life, that the mindfulness might be there for us and to help us in that situation.
Yeah, and grieving is just a very human thing as well. You know, it's normal, and it's sometimes gets a bit pathologized in the modern world. You know, you're allowed to grieve for a certain amount of time, and then it becomes depression. You should do something about it. It's just part of being human. So I think to just welcome that experience, I think, is a very healthy thing. Yeah,
and it's not like if I'm mindful that I won't feel sadness in a certain situation.
No.
Feel it, but express it in a way that you feel comfortable with, to give it its own natural expression. And I think if we're trying to sort of, there's a mismatch between here and what's there, then that just means that things bottle up and they take a lot longer to resolve.
Mindfulness helps us to feel things fully, but the way they are, you know, it's really interesting. If you look in the brain, you know, when we're experiencing an unpleasant emotion or unpleasant sensation, it's the insula that's feeling that. And there are studies that have found that when people practice mindfulness, the insula is actually more active, so they're feeling, let's say, something like depression more fully.
It's a big part of self-awareness.
But they report being less depressed. It's very interesting. And so what they're actually doing is just experiencing the heaviness or the tiredness or whatever that is, but without the story and the reactions, and they don't report that being depression. It's just an experience, and that's something that mindfulness can help us do.
Yeah,
particularly with regular meditation practice, and that was, I guess, the final thing I want to talk about today. You know, we had this longer practice this week. A lot of learners finding it pretty hard to establish that daily practice, that regular routine, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, and some finding that the longer practice led to more sleep, or there's a question about, well, what about using the meditation practice for sleep. And I think it can be very helpful at night to help us to get to sleep. But I tend to recommend that not being the primary practice in the day. That might be a supplementary practice, but to practice it earlier in the day, so it's actually about being awake and aware as well. But it can certainly be very helpful for sleep.
Definitely, yeah. So do your regular practice sitting in the chair, and then at night, if you want to help yourself get to sleep, do an extra bit of practice just to sort of let go of the day.
Not trying to get to sleep, because if we're doing that, to allow it to happen.
Yeah, fantastic. Some learners as well practicing unguided with a timer, which I think is fantastic. Ideally, we want it, once we're familiar with the flow of meditation, we want to get away from relying on guided audios and apps so that we can just meditate anytime, anywhere. So that's fantastic to read. So, I guess...
Now our revels are ended.
Yeah. So just in terms of wrapping up, we'd love you to leave us some feedback. Step 4.15, please leave us some feedback. Let us know what you thought. Rate and review us online as well. If there are other people who you think might benefit from this course, and who wouldn't benefit from doing a course like this at a time like now, please, talk about it, share it with your friends. You can repeat the course. It runs again on the 5th of October. And as I mentioned at the start, Maintaining a Mindful Life, which is sort of the part 2 that starts August 24. And you can enroll in that already. Got some great recommended resources, step 4.13, and we've got an awesome YouTube channel where we publish regular mindful moments, little sort of bite-sized mindfulness videos. So check that out as well.
Yeah. So it's been fantastic to be with everybody over these past few weeks, and thank you to all the team behind the scenes, because we're sitting here, but I can assure you there's a wonderful team working to put this on and to try and give you the best experience we can of mindfulness, so that this 4 weeks is a springboard for the rest of your life.
Yeah. So happy practicing.